Yeah. So good morning, everyone. So in the last session, this is your batch tracker. So this is in the last session, that is on Saturday. I covered like why do we need to use performance testing tools, and why can't we do manual load testing manually, isn't it? And I also covered what are the different performance testing tools in the market, isn't it? Let me go to the slide.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So these are the important, these are the major performance testing tools in the market: LoadRunner, JMeter, and NeoLoad. So apart from that, there are multiple tools like WebLoad, SIL-Performer, or IBM RPT, and so on. Okay. So this is what we covered in the last session. Okay. And did I cover this HTTP response codes to you?
No, sir.
Did I complete this HTTP response codes, guys, in your batch?
Sir, no, sir.
No, sir. Just to give a brief detail.
Okay.
About 200 response.
200.
In today's session, let me cover performance testing life cycle and let me give an introduction to LoadRunner. All right. So this is performance testing life cycle. These are the different phases in performance testing life cycle. Okay, let's assume that. So suppose a client or any company want to do performance testing for their application. Say for example, Heritage Supermarket want to do performance testing for their website, or any other application, any other client like Reliance Digitals or Reliance GeoMart, and Reliance has launched GeoMart, right? They want to do performance testing for their application, online application. Clear? So first they will float something called RFI. They will float something called RFI. Means they will release something called RFI, where RFI stands for request for information. Right? So let me give some example for this. Suppose you want to buy a house. Right? So and then first what you do generally, if you want to buy a house, like based on the city that you are staying, so you will inform like, or you will post your requirement in some online websites like Magic Bricks or 99 Acres or something. Yes or no? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? RFI stands for request for information. Right. So you'll post your requirement on some, if you want to purchase a flat, right? You may post your requirement, or you want to rent a flat. You'll post a requirement in some online websites like 99 Acres or Magic Bricks, or we have a lot of those, right? Nobroker.com, or a lot of those, right? So Common Floor. So in the same way, suppose if client want to do some performance testing for their application, for their net banking application or web mobile application, right? They will post their requirement, and that is called as RFI, request for information. They will have certain channels and they will post that information over those channels, right? So now different service-based companies who are looking for some business, right? They will be approaching those. They will collect that RFI document, RFI questionnaire, and they will respond to that questionnaire. Right? So basically, RFI consists of a standard set of questionnaire. There will be some standard questions like this. Let me show one sample RFP. Right? UBC stands for University of British Columbia. See here, right? University of British, UBC stands for University of British Columbia. So they wanted to do performance testing for their application, for their what we call them, for their online application, online portal for their university, right? So they floated this RFI, right? They floated this RFI, and RFI contains a standard set of questionnaires like this. What portion of your business is dedicated to performance testing? So observe here, these are the questions in black color. So, you can ignore this stuff for timing. I'll explain that. So RFI contains a standard set of questions like this. What portion of your business is dedicated to performance testing? How many full-time, part-time, contract performance testing staff members are there at your company? What are the typical roles and responsibilities of your performance test team structure? So this RFA contains some standard questions like this. What is the average team size for performance projects? Describe your onboarding process, right? So they will share this question, with that questionnaire like this, which will contain a standard set of questions. Now, whatever service-based company came across this requirement, right? They will respond to that questionnaire by providing the answers like this. So I kept a placeholder. So this service-based company can be Infosys or CTS or TCS or Tech Mahindra, right? So they will respond with the information like this. 12% of our total business is from performance testing engagement. So when I was working in a service-based company, I responded to this RFI. I prepared these questions and answers to their questionnaire, and I responded like this. Clear, guys? We have dedicated competency groups for all types of testing activities. 12% of our total business is from performance testing assignments. And to the second question, how many full-time, part-time, contract performance testing staff members are there at our company? I responded saying that we have a dedicated competency group called performance engineering, which has 400 full-time associates, blah, 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 right? So we respond to the questionnaire. Service-based company, someone from the service-based company will respond to that questionnaire, right? So once the client receives a response for this RFI, right, request for information, they will sort out, some companies, some service-based companies, and they will ask for RFP. They will ask for RFP. So now let's translate or let's map this to our real-time requirement. Suppose you are looking to buy an apartment or a house, and you posted your requirement in Magic Bricks or 99 Acres or something. Now some builders will approach you saying that we have apartments in so and so area of these so and so dimensions and all this, isn't it? Right? Now what you do is like you select some builders among them, or you select some, you may have some area preference. So you'll select some builders who responded or who are having projects in your area, in your preferred area. And you will ask them to provide a quote. For example, you select some 2 BHK or 3 BHK, and you may ask to provide some quotation. Yes or no? Guys, understood or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? So this is called as RFP stage. Request for RFP. RFP stands for request for proposal. Let me write it down in your notes. Request for proposal or quotation. Okay. Now that service-based company, what they do is like they will schedule some meetings with the client, right, to understand the requirement completely, and they will prepare something called RFP or solution document, right? They will prepare or we can say customized quote. We can say that they provide a customized quote. Okay. So for example, initially in the RFI stage, they will say that, we have project in so and so location, or this is our experience, right? If we map it to the real life example of purchasing a flat, right? Purchasing a flat or a house, builder will respond saying that we have 30 years experience in building, right, in this field, right? And we have projects in so and so area and all this. They will provide some information. Okay. The next stage is you will sort out some builders of your choice, or some builders which are having projects in your preferred area, and you will ask them, and you will say that you will tell your requirement. I am looking for a 2 BHK, or I am looking for a duplex villa, something like that, and you will ask them for a quotation, right? So in the same, ask them for a quotation, yes or no?
Yes.
So in the same way, client will ask for a proposal or a solution document. Now what we do is the service-based companies respond to the client by providing a customized solution for the client, right? So in this process, what they do is they will service-based company will have some meetings with the client. They will take the requirements and they will prepare a proposal document or a solution document saying that, so for your project to be completed, let's say for example, we need to deploy one project manager, right, one team lead, right, and one senior resource, senior test engineer, and two junior resources, two or two test engineers, right? So client service-based company will propose some team structure, as well as these are the different types of testing your application requires. For example, load testing. Your application requires load testing and soak testing, soak or endurance test. I already covered what are the different types of tests, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes, sir.
So Ramabu, did you go through those recorded sessions? Or those who joined the last week, did you go through those recorded sessions, guys?
Yes, sir.
Right? This require your application requires so and so test like load test or soak or endurance test. To propose that client should, so service-based companies should understand the application clearly, right? So for that, they will schedule some meetings with the client and they will collect some information about the application or what type of testing their client is looking for, or what is the client requirement, right? They will collect all those requirements at a high level and they will prepare some solution document which consists of this information. What are the different types of tests that application requires? What is the team structure? How many members required to do the testing? And what are the timelines? How many days or how many months the project will take? And billing. Billing means, so how much do they charge for this project manager? How much for team lead? How much for senior test engineer? How much for junior test engineers? Right. So billing, again in billing, there will be fixed bid or T&M. There is something called time and material. So let's map this to our real time, this house example. Suppose you want to buy or else, suppose you want to construct a house, right? So you will be looking for some contractors and you will inquire with some contractors, and contractors come to you and they will prepare some quotation. They will give you some quotation, right? So this would be the cost of this project. Again, when they give that quotation, right, there will be two things. One is fixed bid. For example, the whole house, for constructing the whole house, let's say for example, it costs some 80 lakhs, right? Or they may also tell you that they may also propose that I will send you labor every day. You pay me per head this much, right? 800 per day or 1000 rupees per day. And you get the material, or this would be the cost of the material, building construction material. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? So there is, in the same way in software project also, we will have two things like fixed bid and T&M. This is called as T&M, or time and material. Time means how many days the work involves and how many resources it involves, right? Isn't it? So they will provide some billing information as well. Clear, guys? Now client will take this RFP or solution document from different vendors, right? Different vendors are different service-based companies, and they will finalize one service-based company based on their budget and based on their application, right? Based on the service-based company experience, right? And all they will finalize one service-based company and give that project to one of those service-based company. Just like how you inquire with different contractors if you want to construct a house, you will inquire with different contractors and you can give it to only one contractor, right? So you will select someone whom you feel best one among the and whose terms and conditions are agreeable for you? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So now you will give that contract to some contractor. So in the same way, client also will shortlist one, will finalize one of the service-based companies and award that project, give that project to one service-based company. Right. Sometimes they can give project to you see, in same project there will be multiple applications. In that case, they can give to multiple service-based companies also. All right. So once we get the project, once a service-based company get the project, right, then the whole team will be involved from here. So in this phase, like project manager and team lead will be involved, right? Senior resources will be involved in this RFI and RFP stage, right? So in RFI and RFP stage, senior resources or project managers or sales teams will be involved over here. Now, once we get the project, right? For example, you are working for CTS. So you got a project, right? You are working in a performance testing team and you got a project. Now what will happen is the whole team gets involved from this phase, right? So whatever team structure we propose to the client, right? We propose some team structure to the client. Yes or no? So all these team members will be involved in the requirement gathering phase and they will collect the requirements at a detailed level. Here in the RFP stage, they will collect the requirements at a high level. Here in the non-functional, see, NFR stands for non-functional requirements. Okay. Performance testing is also called as non-functional testing, isn't it? Why performance testing is called as a non-functional testing? Anyone?
No coding is involved in.
Here we are not touching the functional parameters of the application, like username, credentials, like that.
Right. So testing, there are two types of testing, functional testing and non-functional testing. I already explained this test before. Okay. Functional testing and non-functional testing. Right? I also gave some examples, right? Isn't it? Suppose you are testing an application like Gmail. So once you type gmail.com, you should get this page. You should get this login page like this, right? Google icon, Google logo should be displayed in this color, and there should be some text box displayed for email or phone, right? We call this as a text box. So if you enter your valid email address and click on next button, right, it should display a password. The application should prompt for the password. So suppose if you enter some invalid or junk characters like this, isn't it? Right, and click next, it should display some error message. So this is the functionality of the application, and testing the functionality of the application is called as functional testing.
Functional testing.
Right? Whereas performance testing is load testing. So we are not bothered about the functionality of the application. We will not test functionality of the application, but we will test the application under load, isn't it? So this is called as, that's why performance testing is also called as non-functional testing.
Non-functional testing.
Right? So there will be separate teams for functional testing and non-functional testing. Okay. Different team will be doing functional testing and a different team will be doing non-functional testing. I already explained this in the previous sessions. Anyways, so is everyone clear on this? You should have a clarity on this. What is functional testing and non-functional testing? Right? Now we collect the non-functional requirements. Every team member will be involved in the requirement gathering phase, and they will collect all the non-functional requirements of the application. So I'll explain this this requirement gathering in a separate session. In the next one of the sessions, I'll explain that. Now, once we collect the requirement, right? So let me give a brief about this requirement gathering. So go through this PPT today, right? So all these are easily understandable concepts. Look, so these are the different requirement gathering. So requirement gathering can be divided into general, architectural, and business requirements. Okay, general, architectural, and business requirements. Go through that PPT as I shared this PPT to everyone. Right, go through that once. Now, once we collect all the requirements, right? So we'll prepare a test plan document. We'll prepare a test plan document, and we should get a approval from the client for the test plan document. We'll share the test plan document over email, and we have to get approval from the client. Right? That is called as sign off. Sign off from the client means client should go through the requirement to the test plan document, and he will say whether he may suggest some changes, or else he may say that I'm good with this test plan document. Okay. Is it clear, guys?
Sir, once it's the
Yes.
test plan, until and unless we get it from the approval from the client, we can't do it.
We can't proceed on the testing. Yes.
So
We should not proceed on the testing.
this test plan is based upon the requirements what we have gathered from the client.
Correct. So whatever the requirements we gathered in the NFR phase, requirement gathering phase, based on that, we'll prepare a test plan document. Right? So once we get a sign off for the test plan document, right, we will start with scripting. We will start developing the scripts. So I sorry, I also explained, I already explained. So how do we like, what is scripting, and how do we decide on, like what scripts we need to prepare, right? So for example, if I gave some examples like for a travel application or a net banking application, isn't it? If it is a net banking application, these are the critical business flows. So where do we get all this information? We get all this information in the requirement gathering phase. Okay, let me do one thing. So let me cover this requirement gathering, right? So let me cover this requirement gathering. So the first and foremost requirement is what is the current project timeline to start and to begin and close the testing activities. Means what is the starting and completion date, right? Next requirement is what is the, if the application functionality is stable and functional testing is completed, right? And the next important requirement is what are the URL and credentials of the application, right? So if you are testing a web application, right, so you have to ask like what is the URL and can you provide any test credentials, or else if the application has some registration provision to register yourself, you can register yourself and you can create some credentials. Yes or no? So let me show this sample application called web tools, right? So say for example, if you want to so you should ask like what is the URL of the application. The client should provide the URL of the application, isn't it? And credentials of the application, right? So you should ask the client what can they provide some test credentials, right? Or else, for example, you are testing this application, advantageonlineshopping.com. So you should ask what is the URL of the application that you are going to test. And also you can ask like whether they can provide any test credentials, or else this application has some registration functionality. Say for example, if you click on this user icon, you can create new account. So you click on create account and you can register, you can create some user IDs. Yes or no? You provide your username, email address, password, and all this information, and you can create an account for this application. Clear case? You can register yourself and you can create an account for this application, right? So that you can explore the application. You can log into the application and you can explore the application, and you can explore these critical business flows. What are the how to do user registration, how to log in, right? Yes or no? Yes, this is a e-commerce application. This is a demo application. This is also a demo application. You can see it here. And this is an e-commerce application. For example, let me show you. There are some products on the application like speakers, tablets, laptops, and mouse. So you can shop, you can navigate through the application, or you can search for some products and you can place an order for some products. And please remember, this is a demo application. It will not be a real order. Okay. This is a demo application or a sample application. So can you go through this? Can you access this URL, guys, everyone? I'll share this URL with you on Zoom chat. I shared the URL over Zoom chat, or else you can type it over here, advantageonlineshopping.com. You can do a Google search for like this. Okay. Advantage online shopping. Right. This is the application. Everyone able to access this?
Yes, sir.
So here you can clearly see this is a demo application. Okay. This is not a real-time application. Looks like a real-time application because this is a modern application which is used by Micro Focus load runner for giving client demos to the client. Okay, so this looks like a real-time application, but this is not a real-time application. This is a demo application only. Some trainers are saying that this is a real-time application. It seems no, this is not a real-time application. Here you can clearly see that this is a demo application. All right. So now you have to ask the client what is the URL and credentials of the application. Otherwise, you can click on this user icon and you can register here for this application. In that way, there are multiple applications. Suppose, for example, there is one more demo application called JPET Store. Let me show you that. So again, this is another demo application. Here you can clearly see JPET Store demo. Right? So again, this is an online application for shopping pets. Here, guys. So, and this is the URL of the application. And if you want to register, right, you can click on sign in and click on this register now. So to create an account for yourself, right? So this is the next information that you have to ask, right? URL and access credentials of the application. Sometimes client will provide if the application doesn't have a registration functionality, or if the application is not accessible over internet, right? They may provide access to their environment, and they will give you some test credentials as well if that doesn't support user registration. Okay. Suppose it is a desktop application, right? And the desktop applications cannot be like, they may not be having a registration functionality. So in that case, like client will provide some test credentials, test username and password. Okay. And next requirement is any preference on performance testing tools. We will ask the client whether do you have any preference for any particular performance testing tool like LoadRunner or JMeter or NeoLoad. Please give me a moment. So we'll ask the client whether they are preferring any performance testing tool, or else we decide like based on the client budget and all. If client has budget, so another next important interview question. Suppose you want to suggest a performance testing tool to a client, right? How do you decide like which testing tool to use? Suppose you have to decide which performance testing tool to use for a project. Right? Which tool do you recommend and on what basis? Right? So which tool do you recommend and what basis? We have multiple performance testing tools, right? Suppose client asks you to recommend some tool. Client doesn't know anything about the tool and client asks you only to suggest some tool. So which tool do you decide and on what basis? Which tool do you recommend and on what basis? So there will be multiple factors here. Suppose client has some budget, good budget, right? So we can suggest some licensed tools like LoadRunner or NeoLoad. But client says that I don't have any budget for, I can pay only for your team, but I don't have budget for tool, performance testing tool. Then you go for some open source tools like JMeter and all, which are free tools. There, guys. So also there will be a lot of factors like the tools should be supporting the protocol, right? For example, it is a web protocol. Your application is web protocol. I already explained what is meant by protocol, right? So suppose your application is a web application. Yes, you can go through like JMeter. JMeter supports that web protocol. Here, guys. But JMeter doesn't support some open source tools, doesn't support some protocols like SAP GUI, CBEL kind of application. Some applications cannot be tested with open source tools like JMeter. Then you have to go for licensed tools like LoadRunner or NeoLoad or any other licensed tool. So based on all these factors, we recommend some tool to the client, right? Next question is what type of performance testing should be performed? What type of performance testing should be performed? So we already discussed some different performance testing types, right? So based on the type of the application, we have to suggest what type of application should be, what type of performance testing should be carried out for that application, right? And we have observed that, so I'll explain this firewall and all later on. I'll go quickly and try to complete this today. Okay. Next important requirement is what are the goals of performance testing activity? Means what are we doing performance testing for? Or why do we do performance testing for their application? Right? Whether it is to evaluate the system against, I gave some examples here, whether to evaluate the system against performance criteria. System is nothing but application. To evaluate the application against the performance criteria, right? So again, there can be different performance criteria. I'll explain this. Okay. Let me quickly explain otherwise. What is meant by performance criteria? Okay. Or interviewers can ask like this: what is the performance criteria of your application? Right? So one performance criteria can be response time SLAs. What is meant by response time SLAs? What is meant by response time first of all?
When we are the request to the application.
Time taken
Total
by
seconds
server.
When a user makes a request until they receive a response.
Right. So suppose you type Amazon.in, it took some 1 second or less than a second to load the page, right? So this is called as response time of this application. Now, what are response time SLAs? Right. So SLA stands for service level agreements. Service level. Right. For example, so I'll give some SLAs. Okay. For example, client requirement is like this. My home page should be loaded in 1 second. Okay. And login should not take more than 2 seconds. Login to the application should not take more than 2 seconds. So let's assume that these are the response time SLAs of that particular project. Of course, these numbers are not fixed numbers, guys. Please remember, these are not fixed numbers. That depends on the application. But these response time SLAs look something like this. Is it clear now? What is meant by response time SLAs? So this can be one of the performance criteria, or else client have some other performance criteria like 99% of my transactions should pass. This can be one of the performance criteria. See, sometimes when you try to book a ticket or whenever you try to place an order, sometimes the order fails, right? Whenever there is huge load on the application, the order may fail, yes or no? But 99% of the transactions should pass. That can be one of the performance criteria for the client. Right? So client will tell you like what is the performance criteria for their application. Right? We should collect all these, and we should evaluate the application against the performance criteria. We should collect all that information in the requirement gathering phase, and we should evaluate the application against the performance criteria. So this is one of the goals of performance testing. The other goals are discover what components of the application perform poorly and under what conditions. When I say what components or what parts of the system, suppose this is your web application, right? It will be having multiple components like web server, application server, database server, load balancer, and all this, right? So we may need to do performance testing to find out what components of the application are performing poorly and under what conditions, right? And compare two platforms with the same software to see which performs better, right? Compare two platforms with the same software and to see which performs better. Clear? So suppose client has some application and they want to compare the performance on Windows and Linux operating system, right? To decide like which operating system they want to go ahead. Or else in Linux only, see, generally applications will be, your servers will be running on Linux operating system. This is where application server, web server, database server, right? All these servers will be running on Linux operating system, not Windows. Windows is best for like personal use, whereas for servers and all, they will be using Linux operating system. So, and client want to compare in Linux, again, there are different flavors of Linux. There are different flavors of Linux. I don't want to go into that discussion now. But so let's say client want to determine which platform gives better performance. I'll just quickly show you what are the different flavors of Linux. Okay. So there is Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and there are different flavors of Linux. Red Hat Ubuntu Linux, and yeah. So these are the different flavors of Linux. You see here Red Hat Enterprise Linux, AX, Ubuntu, SUSE Linux, Fedora, and all this. See, these are nothing but the operating systems used on your servers actually. Okay, clear guys? They will not be using, for running the application. They will not be using, most of the companies won't be using Windows operating system, but they will be using Linux operating system, right? So this is what I mean to say when I say two platforms. Here guys, you'll get a better understanding later on. Okay, so we will ask, like, what are the goals of performance testing activity? We will ask the client, like, what is the reason for, what is the objective of doing performance testing activity, or we will try to understand from with the based on the discussions with the client. Next, what will be the acceptance criteria for each performance test? Right? So this is the performance acceptance criteria that I explained just now. So here I explained it, performance acceptance criteria. All user transactions should pass with response time not more than 5 seconds. Yes, these are just examples. These numbers are just examples. Okay. And at least 95% of the user transactions should be completed successfully. Just now I explained some performance criteria, right? Right? Performance acceptance criteria. Let me show you. Let me make it this.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I have one doubt.
Yeah, yes, please.
Yeah, suppose client does not give any SLA, any requirements. Our client have no idea. So what should be a good response time in performance testing? Suppose in my server, I have my visitor is 10,000, suppose, in one day. So
What is that? In one day?
In one day on my website, 10,000 visitors.
Okay.
Okay. And client have no idea what will be the good response time. In many times it will be happen. So what will be the average time and how we can achieve in this situation?
Right. So if client doesn't have any information, like how much time should home page take, how much time login page take, right? So if client doesn't have any information and client asks us, like, what are the response time SLAs? What can be the response time SLAs? See, generally client will be having that because they will provide those requirements to the developers also. Okay. Architects. Okay. So in the development phase, right, architects will be involved. Software architects will be involved, and they will, if client doesn't have any idea, they will take those numbers based on the industry standards. For example, if there is a web application, they will see what are the response times of their competitors. For example, JioMart came into business recently. Yes or no? In India, like JioMart came into e-commerce business. Previously, there are Flipkart and Amazon, right? Flipkart and Amazon are already there, and JioMart is the new entrant into that business. Now, suppose JioMart doesn't have any information, like what are the response time SLAs, then they will look into their competitors. How much time Flipkart homepage is taking, or how much time login is taking for Flipkart and Amazon. Based on that, JioMart team will tell the developers, right? So my homepage should be loaded in 1 second. Login should not take more than 2 seconds. Based on that, they will decide the response time SLAs. They will take the industry standards or their competitors' applications. They look into the competitors' applications, how much time they are taking to load how much time the home page is taking to load, or how much time login is taking. Is this clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, any other questions? Right. So let me move on to the next slide. So we'll collect all these requirements from the client guys. And in this requirement gathering phase, all the team members should be involved, ideally. Next requirement is architectural requirement. I told you, right? Requirement gathering can be broadly classified into 3 types. Let me write it. NFR gathering. Okay, NFR. Sorry, NFR. Non-functional requirements, non-functional requirements. They can be broadly classified into general, architectural,
Business.
And business requirements, right? So now we completed general requirements and we are discussing architectural requirements, requirement gathering, architecture. So in the architecture, in this category, right? So we ask what type of application it is, whether it is a client server application or a web-based application or a mobile app. Yeah, Ramesh, yes, Ramesh, do you have any query?
Yes, Pawan. Actually, this is the new product. We are going to launch this application. So we don't know how many concurrent users to be perform on this application with load test. So how can we do
Right. So in such cases, when the application is developed, right, at that stage itself, they will have an idea. Software development architect will have an idea like how many users should the application, what is the anticipated user load, means how many users can we expect initially, right? So they will have a development team will have an idea about what is the anticipated user load and all.
So development team will decide that concurrent users.
No, actually business analyst team, there will be a team called business analyst team.
Okay.
They will collect, they will analyze the requirements, the business requirements, and they will suggest like that the proposed application should support. We are anticipating so that much, this much of user load, for example, 10,000 user load or 20,000 user load. So based on that, the software development architect will design the application. Okay. So we can ask from the business analyst team or the developers. They will be already having an idea like what is the anticipated user load and all.
Yeah, these things will be collected from the scratch of project or once all the functionalities testing verification is completed. When can we get this like concurrent users number?
Performance testing team will collect in the non-functional requirement gathering phase. But by that time the application is developed, right? So development architect will be having an idea. Or else if the project is still under development, let's say for example, we are following agile methodology nowadays, right? So testing will be done as soon as the development is started. So, but by the time like business analyst team would give the requirements like this is the anticipated user load and all to the architect, and software development architect will design the application. Architect team will design the application based on the requirements that they collect from business analyst team. There will be a team called business analyst team, BA team or business analyst team. So they will have an idea like what is the proposed, what is the anticipated user load on the application. So we can ask from the business analyst team or the software development architects. Okay. Is it very clear or no?
Yes, sir.
So next type of requirement that we gather is what type of application it is, whether it is a client server application or a web-based application or a mobile application. Right? So you'll ask this client like what type of application is that we are going to test. Right? And I already explained what is a client server application and what is web-based application. Web-based application is nothing but browser-based application. Right? Client server means desktop application, or we also have a term for that, another term for that, for client server application. What is that? Yes, I already explained what is a thick client and what is a thin client, right?
Yes.
Thick client versus thin
application.
Right. So thick client application, desktop applications are called as thick client application. Yes or no?
Yes.
Desktop versus thin client browser-based application.
Browser based.
Or web-based applications. Web applications are called as thin client applications, isn't it? So we will ask what type of application that we have to test, or whether it is a desktop application or a browser-based application or a mobile application. Next, in which technology or platform the application is developed. Means whether it is a Java application or a .NET application or a PHP application. So in which language the application is developed, or whether it is a SAP application. Clear, guys? So based on that, we can engage the resources, isn't it? See, some may be having experience on only Java applications. Some may be having some performance testing resources may be having experience on .NET applications only. right? Some may be having, not everyone will be having experience on SAP applications. So if we collect these requirements in the requirement gathering phase, right? So we can deploy the resources accordingly, isn't it? Performance testing resources accordingly, right? And also which database is used for the application to test? What is the underlying database? Whether it is Oracle database or MySQL or SQL Server. So we'll collect all this in the architectural requirements. I'll share you one Word document. So wherein we will see, we will not ask this one by one to the client, but we will be sharing an Excel sheet or a Word document, and client will be providing that information in the Excel, in that Word document or Excel sheet. Please give me a moment. I'll share you one requirement gathering questionnaire. So this is a sample performance requirements gathering document. Here you can see. Right, let me show you in the page 1. So this is a sample performance testing requirement document. So this is how it looks like. Okay. So please provide business overview of the application to be tested. Okay. Or else let me show you another document which I modified. Where I broadly classified into 3 types: general, architecture. You see here, right? So general requirements. What is the URL and touch screens of the application? Right. So you see all these questions, whatever I have listed here, the same questions will be, you can see it over there in that requirement gathering document.
Sir,
Here, guys, this is how it looks like. What we will do is, I'll come to queries. Okay, I'll come to your question and answers. So we will share this Word document or Excel sheet to the client, and client will fill this form and they will submit to us. They will send back to us. Or else client may schedule a meeting to discuss this. Suppose client doesn't know some questions, can't understand some questions. Then what they do is they will schedule a meeting and we will explain them in the meeting. Right? Then we'll collect all these information from the client, like these general requirements and architectural requirements and business requirements like this. Clear? Yes. Yes, someone is about to ask something.
yes, sir. This is Hari. So the thing is, like, if the application is already existing application, so even also do we need to kind these kind of things like requirements gathering?
Yes. So we have to understand, we should ask like if the application is already existing, right, in production. So first we need to know like why they came for performance testing. There will be some reason why they came for performance testing, right? Maybe they are facing some issues in the performance. They are facing some performance issues, right? Or there are some bugs or defects raised in the application, or when there is some new feature implemented to the application, existing one, right? Even this is already covered, Hari, okay, in the previous sessions. When we have to do, what are the goals of performance testing activity, right? At that point, I explained.
Yes, so we have categorized them into 2 types.
See, for an already existing application, these are the scenarios in which we do performance testing. Whenever some new feature or functionality is added to the application, or increasing number of users are adding new users, or whenever there is some software upgrade or hardware upgrade, then we have to do performance testing. So if the application is already existing, right, we should ask them like, what is the objective of doing performance testing now? Okay.
Okay.
Right. So that is what we ask here in the requirement gathering phase, right? So I have one of the questions in general requirements. So what are the goals of performance testing activity? Okay. So why the client want to do performance testing for their application? So we get that information in the requirement gathering phase. Right. Shall I move to the next one? Is your query clarified or any other questions? Anyone else?
Clarified.
Sir, depending on the technology and platform, the protocol will be changed, right, sir?
Correct.
Okay.
Based on that, the team structure also will be changed. Suppose, see, every resources will not be having experience on SAP applications, or every resource will not be having experience on testing .NET applications. Performance testing team low, like every resource may not be having experience on a .NET application or SAP application, right? But Java applications are 80% of the applications that we test are Java applications. So mostly like every resource will be having experience on Java applications. All right. So based on that, like we have to decide the team structure, team composition. We have to compose the team, right? So for that, we will ask like in which technology or which language the application is developed. Yeah. Based on that, your team lead or project lead will decide, will take the resources into the project. Clear, guys? And shall I move to the next one or any other queries, guys? I'll close it in 2 minutes. Can you take your silence as no? Okay, so let me move on. So which application server is running with the system, whether it is a Tomcat or WebLogic or IAS or WebSphere or JBoss? To some people, this may sound very unfamiliar, right? So nothing to worry. I will explain that, when we are covering, when I cover, once we complete load runner and JMeter, right? Or once we complete one tool, I will explain how to monitor the servers and all. When we go to server side monitoring, I will explain this. What are these Tomcat? So basically, these are application servers for Java applications, Tomcat and WebLogic, and the IAS is for .NET applications. IAS is only for .NET applications. Okay. ASP.NET applications. Okay. ASP.NET applications. And all these 4 servers, Tomcat, WebLogic, WebSphere, JBoss, these are for Java applications. Okay. And IAS server is for ASP.NET application. Means if an application is developed in ASP.NET language, we have to deploy it, or it will work on only on IAS server, but it won't work on this Tomcat or WebLogic because these servers are meant for running Java applications. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. And next, what is the communication protocol between the browser and the server? So this is another important question in the architectural requirement gathering. Right? So what is the communication protocol? Means what is the protocol? What is the communication language used between browser and server? Whether it is HTTP or HTTPS or TCP or FTP. Right? These are the different protocols. Apart from that, there are a lot of protocols. Right? And any encryption used for sending or receiving request or response. So that is another question that we should ask in the requirement gathering phase. Right? So any encryption used, I will explain this encryption later on. And why do we need to, what is encryption and why should we know that information? We will discuss that also later on. Right? Next important requirement is any CAPTCHA used in any of the in-scope business workflows. What is meant by CAPTCHA, guys? Most of you know CAPTCHA, right?
Yes.
See, for example, if you go to onlinesbi.com, right, and click on login, continue to log in, you see some image CAPTCHA here, right? So we have to ask if there are any CAPTCHAs used in the application or any OTPs involved in the application. See, some applications when we log in, right, so they will send some OTP to our mobile and email address and we have to enter that, isn't it? So some applications incorporate both of these. They will have both image CAPTCHA as well as OTP also, isn't it? So SBI uses both, right? It uses in this login page, it uses image CAPTCHA. And once we enter our credentials, it will send an OTP to our mobile or email address, and we have to enter that OTP. So we should ask that information if there is any CAPTCHA involved, because CAPTCHA cannot be handled with the scripts, with the performance testing scripts. So we need to get it disabled or removed or make it static. That's why, like, we should ask in the requirement gathering phase itself that if there are any CAPTCHAs involved in the application, right? So we'll understand this. We'll discuss this more later on in the sessions, right? And what is the target system look like? Guys, we have a couple of other requirement gathering. I'll stop it here for today. It's already more than an hour. I'll stop it here for today. And if you have any questions, we can discuss. Any queries or questions we can discuss and we can close for today. No queries. We'll have some assessment tomorrow. In the first 5 to 10 minutes, we'll have some assessment and then we'll move to the next concepts. We'll complete the requirement gathering tomorrow. Let me update this tracker share.
Sir, can you share these slides?
I'll share it now. I'll share it today to those who confirmed your join. Okay. So we are discussing performance testing life cycle, in which we discussed what all we discussed today. Guys, what did we discuss today?
Requirement, non-functional requirements.
Requirement gathering.
Requirement gatherings in the business,
Requirement
general and
gathering.
architecture.
Okay. So I completed general requirements and architectural partially. Right. So we'll complete this requirement gathering tomorrow. Business requirements will be completed tomorrow, and day after tomorrow I will start load on. We can discuss these response codes and basic terminology I already covered. Yes, sir. What is a transaction? What is think time and all these?
Yes, sir.
These are already
Yes, sir.
covered, isn't it? When did I cover this? Isn't it?
Saturdays.
Saturday session. Okay. 1 second.